John Locke, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Paulo Freire all three had a strong belief system that impacted the way social equality, government, religion, and education were viewed. I propose a valuable question after reading Paulo Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed and John Locke's second treatise. What about women? You cannot speak of equality for all while omitting women out of the equation. It is appalling that during a grand era of enlightenment, women and equality were not specifically mentioned, especially in the subject of voting, participating in government, or working outside their house. Locke's social contract theory ideology can be argued with a series of conundrums. In the second treatise, there are vague interpretations on how he truly felt about women having individual rights. In regards to marriage, Locke stated clearly, conjugal society is made by a voluntary compact between man and women, emphasizing it draws from mutual support and assistance. He elaborates that economical support, mutual understanding, and respect apply to both men and women within a marriage. However, Locke mentions to this purpose, I set down what I take to be political power. That power of a magistrate over a subject may be distinguished that of a father over his children, a master over his servant, a husband over his wife, and a lord over his slave. He states that there is a complete distinction and separation of laws between a government leader, a wife, master over his servant, and a lord over his slave. My interpretation is the rules of equality in a political society does not apply to all. Perhaps even more difficult to understand is the rules of equality mainly apply to whites and not and disregarding people of other ethnicities. Locke was in denial about specific terms in slavery, assuming that people sold themselves at free will. As he says, I confess I find among Jews that men did sell themselves. It is evident that person sold was not under an absolute arbitrary or despotic power. I ask myself this question: how would one willingly volunteer to become a slave? It is not reasonable nor logical. On the other hand, in the works written by Locke, I admire the deist paradigm, which explored logic and reason by rejecting mythical figures and superstition. He denied the divine rights of kings, which states that monarchs were mandated by God to rule over the lower classes. Locke opposed the hierarchy of the feudal system, where kings had power over nobles, nobles had power over peasants, rejecting that social order. Locke called for the glorious revolution and the age of absolutism. Locke was certain that there should be a separation between church and state. These views were later adopted by Thomas Jefferson, the second treatise of government which provided the basis for the U.S. Constitution. Although Wollstonecraft and Freire accepted religion as morality, they did not let it interfere with reason and knowledge. Freire deeply focused his motivation provided to him by his Protestant faith, which was a strong driving force on the agrarian movement, which brought literacy and equality to his hometown of Recife, Brazil. In Freire's Pedagogy of the Oppressed, he explained that the oppressed must understand that their situation is temporary, not permanent. Freire was a strong believer that human behavior was a constant evolution as a result of new experiences. His emphasis was on the praxis, the concept of transformation. He quotes, knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the relentless, impatient, continuing, hopeful, inquiring human beings pursue in the world, with the world, and with each other. As a result of the Great Depression, Freire went from middle class to impoverished, but through his own self empowerment, he morphed into an intellectual being. This is where he began to analyze the corruption of the school system. Highly critical of the failing modern day Western educational school system, Freire believed that education cannot come from standardized testing and memorization, but can only be achieved through the process of critical thinking. As he expresses in the Pedagogy of the Oppressed, there are innumerable well intentioned bank clerk teachers who do not realize that they are serving only to dehumanize. For his hard efforts of educating thousands of peasant farm workers and organizing a revolution against an unjust and corrupt government, he was sent into exile and incarcerated. Like Freire, Locke wrote about the significance of education by stating that parents are responsible for ensuring that their children become well educated at a young age. Like Freire, Locke believed in virtue, knowledge, and experience, suggesting the mind at birth is a tabula rasa, a blank slate, and is informed only by experience. All knowledge is acquired through life experience and education. The Age of Enlightenment brought about this new wave of great thinkers who understood the importance of education. On a vindication of women's rights, Mary Wollstonecraft focused primarily on education, for men and women as well. Wollstonecraft states that men have mistakenly viewed education in a negative way by only considering it as a preparation of life, instead of viewing it as a key of striving for excellence and wisdom. Not only did Wollstonecraft believe women were lacking education, but young men who join the military service at a young age without receiving formal education gives them a disadvantage and is a disservice to the young minds.